Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Saturday 8 a.m. edition of Stanching Tyranny. We're glad you could be here. We're Jim and Jeff Stanch. We're hosts of this show every Saturday here on WPG 1450 AM.
That is correct.
And again, thanks for joining us. There's a lot that we want to talk about today, naturally.
Yeah.
And let me just start by saying it is not the anniversary of 9/11.
Well, no. Today is 9/14.
Well, no. I mean, what we want to talk about this week is not the anniversary of 9/11. Nor do we want to talk about the fire in Seaside Heights.
No, which is sad.
It's sad. A lot of memories up in flames, so to speak, due to that fire. But that is not what we want to talk about.
No.
What else do we not want to talk about? Barack Obama's speech. We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
That happened earlier this week.
Yeah. And got some praises in the media, naturally.
And we may not even talk about World War III.
Yeah.
You know what we want to talk about, listeners? Today, this Saturday, the, 14th
I already said that, did I not?
You did. Yeah. Of Stanching Tyranny Radio is the economy.
Yep.
Let's talk about the economy, shall we?
Yeah. All the other stories are important.
Yeah.
Don't think that they're not. But there's a bigger story, and that is the economy. That's the story that Americans should be following very closely.
Yeah.
But mainstream media is making sure that you're not. They want you following, Putin upstaging Obama.
Yep.
All that going on with Syria, and how the Obama administration is lame and got outmaneuvered, which is all true, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's all by design. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, and we have some things we need to pay attention to. But really, what got my pants all tied in a knot was an article I came
You mean
across.
your panties all tied in a knot?
No, my pants.
Oh,
thank you.
Okay.
My pants all tied in a knot is an article, well-written article by a fellow named Michael Snyder of a website that we are fond of called Activist Post. And it's a great article. And what it's about is the fact that back in 1933, in the midst of the Great Depression,
which we know was well underway and had a long way to go.
Started in 1929.
Wasn't over till 1941
or so, 2, something like that. Right? Well-written article about the fact that, about this one fact is the Associated Press was pumping out an awful lot of news stories with optimistic economic headlines.
And that's in 1933.
Yes.
There was nothing to be optimistic about in 1933, if you were being completely honest.
That's correct. And the article points out that even in the midst of it, in 1933, many Americans still did not believe that there was a depression going on. Now, is that what we learned in high school, Bug?
No.
No. We learned that the Depression was awful and that, there were people, round and round, blocks long lines for soup and bread. Right. There was nothing to eat and nothing to buy and, just things falling apart all over. And we've always learned, as if from the perspective, that it was pretty darn much obvious.
It was common knowledge, yeah. Now, your point is that we know all that now.
Right.
But apparently it wasn't that mainstream back then.
It wasn't obvious.
It was kept quiet, wasn't it?
It was. Let me read some headlines from 1933. Headline number 1, decisive break from panic shown in business figures.
Decisive break from panic.
Yeah, no, that's the way they wrote back in 1933. They had a lot more knowledge than we do today.
Right. Well, but the message is, the headline is, well, decisive break from panic. This thing, man, we made a 180 on that whole panic thing, and we're heading in the right direction.
Here was another one. Era of fear is declared at end.
Okay.
Another one?
And that was from 1933.
1933. Another headline from 1933. Markets spurt to new highs.
Wow.
Sound familiar, listeners?
Yeah.
Hence our point.
Yeah.
Hence our point.
There were new highs during the Depression.
Yeah.
But it was still a depression.
Right. It was new highs from very bad lows, listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you gotta keep that in perspective when you hear the propaganda coming from the mainstream news, the newspapers, the magazines, the television, all of it.
Right.
Keep that in mind. Another interesting tidbit. Do you know what the Democrat National Convention theme song was in 1932?
I know what it was.
You have a feeling.
Yeah, I know what it was. I can hear it playing in my skull.
Right. Da, 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 da. Happy days are here again. That's right. That song was used further in the campaign of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his successful campaign, by the way, and it went on to become the unofficial theme song for the Democrat Party for years to come. Now, there's only one problem, is Roosevelt didn't end the Depression, right?
Right.
Years of bitter economic suffering. The Great Depression was full steam ahead in 1932. But the politicians played their cheery songs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, happy days were here again for them, probably. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they were taken care of just as they are today.
Exactly, Boog. You hit the nail right on the head. Let me read some rosy headlines that we have from today.
Oh.
CNBC, recession risk gone in all U.S. states but one.
Ah.
And that, by the way, was Delaware.
Okay.
For some reason. Foreclosure crisis is drawing to a close. Stocks close near highs. S&P logs 7-day rally.
Woohoo!
So don't those headlines sound great?
Yeah.
See? Happy days are here again. That's right. That's right. Happy days are here. We're going to take a quick break. Enjoy the nice music. Stick with us. Stanching Tyranny Radio. Welcome back to Stanching Tyranny Radio. We're Jim and Jeff Stanch, just celebrating the happy days that are here again.
Listeners are glad that I'm not humming anymore.
I'm sure. Although it makes excellent radio.
It sure does.
So we're talking about the fact that be careful what you listen to, what you believe, what will be piped into your homes by that dreaded, dastardly box in the corner of the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Or on the wall, I guess, these days.
These days, it's on the wall.
Yeah. Because the simple fact is the middle class is dying in America. And just some facts that you won't hear a lot about in the mainstream news. The labor force participation rate is at the lowest level that it's been in 35 years. 35 years. 516,000. Now, forgive me with my math, but that's 500,000, right?
Yes.
I'm just checking.
A little more.
A little more than 500,000 Americans left the labor force last month.
500,000 people left the labor force.
That's correct.
Which means they either stopped working or stopped looking for work.
Correct. And that is an all-time record high. See, they don't tell about that all-time record high on the headlines of the Wall Street Journal.
But the S&P all-time record high,
they're all about
that's all over, right?
Makes you wonder if the reason why that isn't on the headlines is because the Wall Street Journalites really don't care about that particular stat.
Well,
as
why
long
would they?
as the Federal Reserve keeps pumping money, which that will allow them to do, they're happy, and hence the stock market continues to go up, even though it gets dismantled where bastions of American industry like Alcoa get taken off the Dow Jones and replaced with
Goldman Sachs
and Nike sneakers.
Give me a break.
They
took off Alcoa.
Yeah, Alcoa.
Goldman Sachs is. Do listeners remember
Goldman Sachs? John Corzine, listeners, remember him?
Right.
Goldman Sachs.
They're evil.
They're a bunch of bums.
All they want to do is part you from your money.
Listeners, they're the ones that sent the emails to each other that referred to people as their clients as Muppets.
Right.
Remember that, listeners?
That was Goldman Sachs.
And now they're a Dow Jones Industrial Average, contender.
Hotshot, yeah.
They should be ashamed.
I'll tell you.
I continue. U.S. trade deficit with China is at a brand new record high. U.S. trade deficit with the EU also at a brand new record high, as is the number of U.S. households on food stamps. Some brand names that listeners are probably familiar with: Thomasville, Broyhill, Blaine. Nice furniture, wouldn't you say?
Oh, beautiful furniture, yeah.
Bankrupt.
Yeah. Yep.
Bankrupt. Kept put. Another fact. A full-time minimum wage worker in 1968 makes more than a full-time minimum wage worker in 2013. You might be wondering how that's happened, given the fact that in 1968 the minimum wage was $1.60. Today it's $7.65, right? Something like
Unless
that.
you're in California.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Right. The simple fact, listeners, is that $1.60 minimum wage indexed for inflation would be over $10 an hour today. Now, listeners, you know how we feel about the minimum wage. We don't think there should be any minimum wage. The point is that inflation is what really is the number one enemy of the poor and the working class and the middle class.
Yeah.
Because it's stealthy. And the government loves inflation. The reason is they know that all they have to do is simply have the inflation go on as long as possible, get up on the floors of Congress and complain that the farmers are charging too much and that the oil companies are charging too much, and golly gee, the clothing manufacturers are charging too much, and right? They can make the boogeyman out of everybody else about except for the fact that it's the government that creates inflation. They'll get up there and they'll say it's the speculators. It's that.
And you see it on the other end too with the products. We've talked about it before. The Cadbury cream egg.
Yeah.
The Cadbury cream egg used to be the size of a chicken egg.
Yeah, it used to be.
Now it's the size of a robin egg.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, I'm not a real big fan of the
I'm not either. I never particularly liked them.
It's like eating a blob of sugar with chocolate around.
Yeah, it really is.
The kids love them.
They do. They do. But it's true, and we see it with candy bars. I mean, with candy bars, it's great because they put on the package that now, it says now 25 fewer calories.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the impression is, well, they did something good with the ingredients there and the recipe, right? And made it a little healthier for us and to eat that there candy bar. Well, they didn't do anything with the recipe. They just made less candy bar.
Right.
And charge you the same price.
Yeah.
That is inflation.
But the thing is a politician reading this same article will come to the conclusion then that therefore means that the minimum wage needs to be raised. And that's not the answer.
No.
That's not the answer. The fact is the government prints money out of thin air through the Federal Reserve. Let's just have a brief review, listeners, because it's been a while, of how the money system works. Jeff is the banker.
Woohoo!
He's the Federal Reserve.
Right.
I am the government. And I, as a government, have the ability to coin money or produce money.
Yeah, it says so in your Constitution.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem with that, though.
Right.
And that is I can only make a certain amount. Right? I have to collect my operating costs through taxes that I have to levy on people. And if I get too aggressive with that, people will get rid of me.
Or worse.
Or worse.
They'll tar and feather you or whatever the case may be, like they used to do.
Days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You can't be getting all crazy with the taxes.
Right. So Jeff comes to me and he says,
Psst, hey, bub, come here. I got a deal for you. You know that money you need?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'll coin the money.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll loan it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
All you got to do is pay me back plus interest.
Okay.
Now,
why would I do that?
Well, because I'll print as much money as you want.
Ooh, yeah.
All you got to do is promise to give me all the tax revenue.
Okay, so what you're saying is I don't have to really go to them pesky voters. I don't have to go to those pesky voters and say, listen, I want to spend such and such on this or that. You'll just give me the money, loan it to me.
Right.
And they'll have to pay it back anyway because they're the taxpayers anyhow. They just won't know any better.
Right.
I like it. See, that's how they do it, listeners.
Yeah, exactly
that's how they do it. And that produces inflation. So your tax bill isn't your tax bill. Your cost of living is also your tax bill.
Mm-hmm. Because everything is taxed along the way in the value chain.
Correct.
So they want inflation. Do you realize that?
Yeah.
The more inflation there is, the more they get paid.
Correct.
And, it's also interesting to illustrate. You remember the whole tax debate, the tax whatever was expiring. At the end of Bush's term, beginning of Obama, it was expiring and all.
The Bush tax cut.
Yeah, right. Well, notice that they used a fixed number of $250,000
right.
for the transition to the highest tax rate, I think
Correct.
it was.
To the brackets, yeah.
Well, why would they do that?
Oh, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because all they got to do is inflate the currency.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, paupers are making $250,000.
Right. The middle class is now making $250,000 a year, and they're paying the highest tax rate.
Right.
It's all by design. They're very clever.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like a lot of money now, but believe me, they'll make sure that in the very near future, it's not all that much money.
It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be that much money.
Nope.
And that's how they do it. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
The government and politicians want inflation because it serves them. The corporatists, the cronies, the crony capitalists all want inflation because it serves them.
Mm-hmm.
It serves them. They don't want a stable currency. They don't want a hard money currency. Because then they'll say, well, then that will ruin our GDP growth. Well,
right.
GDP is a false number anyway.
It's ridiculous.
Anything. It doesn't measure anything.
Government spending doesn't count.
No.
That's what GDP just measures activity. If I don't want to cut my lawn and I pay Jim $10
to cut it,
that goes towards GDP.
Yeah.
And then if he doesn't want to cut his lawn and pays me $10 to cut it, that adds to GDP.
When really
they should cancel each other out. That's stupid.
Of course they should.
They should cancel each other out. The correct measure, or a better measure, I should say, would be gross national product.
Right.
Which doesn't count government spending.
Yeah, well, that's the value of the assets that are created by an economy.
Right. That's what we should be measuring.
Sure. Sure.
But they don't teach you that anymore.
No,
Yeah.
no, of course not.
Mhm.
That's all old news.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point is that we're living in a time where we're just constantly being lied to, and the economy isn't getting better, and it doesn't look as if there's any politician with the cojones to do what they need to do to make it get better. Because that number one thing would be to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
To completely, I mean, I'm talking dismantle whole departments of government.
Yeah,
That's
what's
what needs
necessary.
to be done,
Yeah.
because it's just too much of a burden on the economy. Businesses, workers can't support it anymore. And the proof of that is this headline: Consumer confidence collapses. Biggest miss on record. Listeners, this is the first consecutive monthly drop in 14 months and the largest miss versus expectations on record of the consumer confidence number. The economists, the pointy heads down there in the think tanks, had a number in mind of 82. It came in at 76.8.
Wow.
Now, that's not just a little miss.
No.
Would you say?
That's a huge miss.
That's a huge miss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the chart of the misses, we haven't had a miss like this going back through this most recent beginning of this most recent recession / depression, or even going back into the late 90s. That's the University of Michigan Consumer Confidence number. It was a huge, huge miss. I think the closest we've ever gotten to it was around 4 points or so of a miss. This is crazy. So why isn't this being talked about?
Well, what we're seeing instead is stories like this. A report from Moody's. The U.S. economy is doing so well, there's nothing to worry about anymore. Based on their detailed analysis, there is no longer any possibility of falling back into a recession in 49 out of 50 states.
Wow.
All U.S. states except for Delaware have escaped the possibility of falling back into recession as they reap the rewards of strong private sector employment.
What?
Strong private sector employment.
What are they talking
and
about?
a burgeoning energy sector, according to an analysis released on Tuesday. Moody's Analytics, which tracks state and metropolitan economies, added Illinois, Wisconsin, and Alabama to its list of states in recovery. That left Delaware alone as its at-risk of recession category. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Moody's.
Mm-hmm.
Were they involved at all with the downgrading of the credit of the U.S. back?
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Were they involved in that at all?
I don't remember. But they're saying that about the employment recovery in that article.
Yes.
Isn't that right? That's what I heard.
Burgeoning. Yeah.
Is that the same employment recovery that has given us the labor force participation rate that is the lowest it's been in 35 years? Is it that burgeoning recovery?
That one. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is it also the same burgeoning recovery that is resulting in 77% of the jobs that have been, quote, created being part-time jobs?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That one.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. And getting back to the fact that minimum wage worker today makes about the same as, less than what a full-time minimum wage worker made back in 1968. That burgeoning job recovery. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Now Moody's changed their outlook to negative in June of 2011. Their outlook on the United States credit rating.
And that's around the time where Fitch did it, and didn't they have some sort of repercussions?
They did.
The government was pretty PO'd at
They
them.
had some sort of backlash, and I forget the specifics, but the government called an investigation and all this stuff.
That's what they do. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here, let me admit to something here.
Okay.
Can I admit to something?
Yeah.
All right, listeners. I understand that Jeff and I continually rant on television, but we have been watching a DVD series of a pop culture show, and that is that Walking Dead show.
Yeah, yeah.
Now
we don't get regular TV,
so
we gotta borrow it from friends.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know,
so we
whatever.
borrowed the last year's season DVDs, and we're watching them. And the people that know the show, I'm going to assume that listeners are familiar with it and watch it. But you got that new little village with the guy that's
the governor,
quote unquote, running it that they refer to as governor.
The governor, yeah.
Now, the governor's pretty darn crafty, isn't he?
He is. He's real crafty.
He went and shot up them National Guard troops, right?
Took their crud,
and then brought it into town. Then he gave this great tear-jerking speech
about how they're heroes,
and sacrificed for themselves for you and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, doesn't that all sound familiar?
It sure does.
Could it be that in this simple show, in this small-scale little village thing that they're showing us, couldn't it be that they're showing us parallels to real life? The fact that we're lied to continually, and that these politicians, every time they open their mouth, will give you a story that best fits their agenda, and that does not resemble the truth. I mean, you see it right in that show.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's blatant. It's like that's exactly what's they use fear to keep the people in their little thing there.
Yep.
Right?
Bread and circuses. They had the little fighting match with the zombies who were actually didn't have any teeth, and but of course nobody knew that. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, isn't that what we go through every day? We can't believe the stuff that we see on television.
It all comes back to just remembering what they're doing to us. Why should we trust them?
No.
When you got things like the NSA and the Snowden leaks and Bradley Manning's leaks and the Patriot Act and all the things that they've done to us in recent history.
Yeah.
We have to remember that stuff.
Yep.
When we hear about what they're doing on our behalf, right?
Right.
Because if we forget those little details and how they're lying to us constantly, then we won't take what they say with the pound of salt we need to take it with.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous.
Right. Right.
We shouldn't trust them.
No.
It's that simple.
No, we shouldn't.
They can't be trusted.
Yeah. And we see that in the economy, in the things that are going on, in the truth of the state of the economy. Mortgage rates have gone up because why? Well, we talk about it here on Stanching Tyranny all the time. The 10-year yield.
Right.
Now it's back down to just under 2.9.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of reasons for that. Remember, listeners, that as bond buying increases, the yield decreases.
Right. And who's buying the bonds?
Well, that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. But you also have oil prices been rising since the summer began. What's going on with that? Why isn't there talk about it? Why isn't there congressional hearings with senators standing up there saying the oil companies have obscene profits, blah, blah. Why isn't that happening?
We need a windfall profit tax.
Right.
Remember that one?
Right.
Yeah.
Why isn't that happening? Why aren't we hearing more about the European Union? You know they're not up out of the woods.
Oh, absolutely
They're nowhere
not.
near out of the woods. I saw a chart of, what was it, Italian and
Greek?
somebody
Greek or
bonds.
Spanish. Yeah,
And
somebody
they are
like that.
actually going through the roof, the yields. The yields are going through the roof. Yet we don't hear about it. Why? That's important. That's a lot more important than Barack Obama's lame speech the other night, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we have to keep an eye on these things. And we'll do our best to try to bring it to light here on Stanching Tyranny Radio. And there are other people that bring it to light.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people that know what's going on and want to point it out to you and want to make sure that you're paying attention.
Yeah, I got this little clip here.
Okay, let's pick it up with the Santelli Exchange live in Chicago. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Simon.
I got it.
Quickly, let's look at the important date of the day. University of Michigan Sentiment Survey definitely laid a bit of an egg. We could also argue so did retail sales for 2 months running. But when it comes to University of Michigan or any confidence index, the one thing I will say is that much research has been done. Confidence doesn't move markets. The markets move the dial on confidence. Enough said. Now, there was a poll out that's raised many eyebrows. Many eyebrows. We had a guest this morning that talked about the poll, and what the poll generally shows, and we'll get to more details, is that Americans aren't really into raising the debt ceiling. Here's what Ben White from Politico had to say on our show. I think it's because Americans don't understand what the debt ceiling is. It's complicated. It's complicated. So basically, listeners, if you're listening on the radio or if you're watching me right now, you're just too darn stupid to get it.
Yeah.
Too darn stupid to get it.
Yeah, that's right.
The hubris. The hubris. So let me see. Let's only poll
Turn the
all
football on.
the Princeton and the Harvard professors and all the people that are writing for places like Politico. Let's only poll them because they know you don't know anything.
Right.
But let's switch gears a bit. Let's now look at another category called the giant leap of faith category. Let me see. That the Fed can really move unemployment, although it doesn't look like it. That the economy is humming along to totally support the levels of equities. That corporate profits at record levels doesn't mean that all these programs are only helping those at the top, even though it's supposedly for everybody in the middle. We're supposed to take all that on a leap of faith. But when I look at the recent Rupee poll, okay, here's what I see, okay? And I'll tell you what. Congress, you really ought to listen up. Those Tea Party conservatives, listen up. Because 70% oppose raising the debt ceiling and 55% oppose raising it, even if it means default. Okay, now get this. 63% say Congress is out of touch. Okay, now if I look at those three things, you know what I see? I see the 2010 midterms. Look at it from a different light. Americans know exactly what they want, and they're not getting it from Congress. Although Lois Lerner certainly pulled the plug on free speech with regard to those conservatives. And the last point, remember the rant? Let's put these things up for a referendum. Well, gee, that didn't happen because 61% of Americans say transparency. Can't see it at all in this administration.
Give me a break. He's absolutely right. That was
see you in a few minutes. Thanks a lot.
Pete Santilli,
on CNBC.
CNBC, that's correct.
Yeah, he hit the nail right on the head, didn't he?
He did.
That was just this week. Mm-hmm. There's other rants you can hear out there.
Absolutely.
That are quite good and need to be paid attention to. We're going to take a quick break. Stanching Tyranny Radio. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Stanching Tyranny Radio. Jim and Jeff Stanch here. Host the show every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. And one of the best ways you can stanch tyranny is to pay attention.
Absolutely.
And we heard the rant by Pete Santilli.
Yeah.
Telling the truth about what is going on out there in the economic world, in the political world, and how you're getting the short end of the stick, listener.
Yeah, that was
and
on
CNBC.
CNBC. This one is on, I think, MSNBC, fellow by the name of Dylan Ratigan. This is almost 2 years old. It'll be 2 years old next month, I should say. But it's right on the money.
It is.
Let me put this on here.
which is that the United States of America is being extracted. It's being extracted through banking, it's being extracted through trade, and it's being extracted through taxation. And there's not a single politician that has stepped forward, Susan, to deal with
but
this.
there's only one right now. The leader of the free world, whether you like it or not, the President of the United States is arguably one of the most powerful individuals we have out there.
But
and
Susan,
he's
what you're saying is exactly the point that Dylan is making. It's not about one guy. It's about all of them.
No, I actually disagree. I think Dylan's saying it is about one guy.
It is about one guy.
What would you like him to do?
I would like him to go to the people of the United States of America and say, people of the United States of America, your Congress is bought. Your Congress is incapable of making legislation on health care, banking, trade, or taxes, because if they do it, they will lose their political funding, and they won't do it. But I'm the President of the United States, and I won't have a country that is run by a bought Congress. So I'm not going to work with a bought Congress and try to be Mr. Big Guy. I'm working with the bought Congress. I'm going to abandon the bought Congress like Teddy Roosevelt did, and I'm going to go to the people of the United States and I'm going to say, you've got a bought Congress. And until we get rid of the bought Congress, which is Jimmy Williams' constant point, which is get the money out of politics, and until a president says that's the problem and says he's going to fix it, there is no policy that I can possibly see, no matter how brilliant your idea may be, or your idea, or my idea, or her idea, or your idea at home.
Well, he has it
Partially right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No president is going to do that.
Right.
And the reason is they're bought too,
Yeah.
Dylan.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I disagree with you.
Well,
they're all bought.
A couple of things I disagree with.
Okay.
I disagree with that. I disagree that FDR was some sort of amazing freedom fighter.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, Teddy Roosevelt, you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, Teddy
Okay.
Roosevelt.
All
But Teddy, that's a perfect example of how you run a campaign to get elected,
Yeah.
and then do the opposite.
Right, right.
It's a perfect example.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what he did.
And that's my point. That's why I say, sure, a candidate can say all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, look at Barack Obama. That's what he did.
That lady that said about the leader of the free world, has she paid attention at all?
I don't think she has.
Notice we're not all that free.
Yeah.
Although maybe we were freer in 2010 than we are in 2013.
Right. Well, that's possible.
That's possible. Maybe she was accurate then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she just sounds like.
But for him to pin the whole thing on the Congress is just silly.
Yeah. Well, they're a big.
The
part
Congress
of it.
is bought.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But so is the president.
Right. Right.
Because the proof is the fact that we don't really have a choice in the president.
Right.
Both sides are chosen.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who
matter,
wins. It's not
really.
Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, remember Joe Biden said during the last election, oh, well, if you elect Mitt Romney, we'll be going into Syria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
What's Obama doing now?
Going into Syria.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. That's our point.
Right.
That's our point. Just like all the hullabaloo about overturning or defund Obamacare, right?
Yeah.
Repeal and reform.
Right. Repeal and replace.
Repeal and replace
that's the mantra.
was Mitt Romney's mantra.
Right.
It would have been replaced with virtually the same thing. Sure, they would have tweaked around the edges to make sure that the quote-unquote conservatives will raise their flag, but it would still end up being a unconstitutional piece of legislation that is forced upon us, whether we like it or not. Just like the income tax, just like Social Security, just like Medicare, just like the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, you name it, listeners. It is just like that because both sides have a vested interest in growth of government, and that's what they want. I don't care if they're a Republican. I don't care if they're a Democrat. They're both the two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, well, and I want to take it a step further. Their interest is in big government and the destruction of the family.
Yeah.
Because
well,
they need that.
Sure.
Because they need people to depend on government.
Right.
You look at that worksheet sent home with the second or third graders. I think it was last week. first day of school, teaching about how government is like family.
Yeah.
They house you, they clothe you,
they feed
you, they take care of you.
Yep.
And isn't that everything that a family does?
And isn't that all the things that we've been duped into believing over the past 100 years?
Yeah.
You understand, listeners, this all doesn't happen by accident. These things don't just happen in a vacuum. They don't just pop up, these issues. It's all planned. It's all figured out. They've been working on it. It's part of a very, very evil agenda that's been around for over 100 years, probably even 200 years.
Yeah.
It's true. And there's a lot of research out there on it that you can find out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, the more you look, the more you say, wow, I didn't put that two together with that two. I thought that two was more of a three. But it turns out it was a two, and that's why we're getting 4 today. See what I'm saying, Boog?
I do.
And we allow this to happen. See, we allow it to happen because the elite, they know that we're human. They know that we have all the weaknesses that God told us we had right there in the Bible, all them many thousands of years ago.
And all they have to do is leverage them.
Exactly.
Right?
Don't think those elitists, those Satanists out there, those Luciferians, don't think they don't read the Bible. They do. And they know how to use it against you. They know how to use your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have what we have today.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have constant chaos in the world so that they can ride in on their chariot and be the ones to deliver order. It happens over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's
the same thing that's happening with Syria.
Yeah. And it's
they created the problem.
Again. Yeah.
They come with the solution.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And it's going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening.
We're so predictable, aren't we?
We are.
Just as mammals. Aren't we predictable?
Well, sure we are.
It's like a dog, Pavlov's dog, or the pigs. If you got pigs, and when they see you, they associate that with feeding time. It's time to eat. Yeah, you get all worked up for eating.
Right.
They're predictable. We know what's going to happen if we go feed the pigs.
Yeah, and let's face it, that's what the global elite call us.
Yeah.
They call us useless eaters.
Right.
It's all part of the design. It's all part of their agenda to control us, to extract from us, to rob us of our liberty and freedom, so that they can have the power and the resources
and to keep us dumbed down so that we are what they need, which is labor.
Right.
They don't want people to think. They want them to merely labor on.
Well, yeah. The fact is, they would love nothing more than for us all to die.
Well,
but they need us.
Mm-hmm.
They
for
need
now,
somebody for now,
until we're replaced with robots,
clean the urinals, and slice up their filet mignons for them.
Clean up after their dogs.
Right.
Cut their grass.
Sure. They need us for all that.
Yeah. But there'll come a time where we're replaced with robots, or even better yet, cyborgs. Or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you call them?
Cyborgs.
What's a cyborg? Is that's
like on Terminator.
Terminator, right.
Yeah,
that's like, right, yeah.
Now, people might assume that cyborg means a violent robot, and it doesn't.
No, they don't have to be violent. They just got a job to do.
That's it.
They could be violent if that's their job.
Well,
they don't have to be if it's just a lawn cutter, cyborg, and he just goes around, cuts grass.
Yeah, exactly.
What the heck? You could probably give them solar panel skin to keep them moving.
You know, they have those robot lawn cutters now.
That's right.
They're like the
the vacuum cleaner, the Roomba, yeah.
Now, you put them in your yard, and supposedly it'll figure out basically what the most efficient way of cutting your lawn is, and all kinds.
And it figures that out by just like
by doing it
right?
Over and over again. Yeah.
And
pretty interesting.
Ultimately learns the layout of your yard.
Right. So you don't really need a cyborg to push a lawnmower, is my point, Boog.
All right.
You don't need a cyborg.
Well,
to...
yeah, maybe you don't, but you need cyborgs for something. I mean, some things you need the manual dexterity of.
Well, yeah, if you want to
and stuff like that.
Like if the global elitist doesn't know how to play the violin, maybe the cyborg could play the violin.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you
play
could
the violin.
I don't know. That's what just came into my mind.
Okay.
My apologies.
All right. But that's a whole different area. If the elitist doesn't know how to play the violin, well then ultimately they'll just get it downloaded into their brain.
Well, yeah, that's happening. I just read a study.
I know
about how they did a study with a rat.
Right.
And they took a rat, right?
Yeah.
And they had, let's call it 2 rooms for the rat to be in, right?
He could go in one of 2 rooms.
Now listen to me now.
I'm getting clarification.
No, let me finish.
He had a 2-room house, the rat.
He had 2 rooms.
All right.
They were aesthetically much different rooms. In other words, their appearance.
Right.
You knew when you were in one room versus the other room.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just 2 rooms that were basically the same. No, they were 2 very different appearing rooms.
I gotcha.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you got room A and room B. Right?
Right.
So they put the rat in room A.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And while the rat's in room A, they use these electric shock things to shock him in through his feet.
Okay.
Right? And they would just keep zapping him.
So that he wouldn't want to be in room A.
So, well, yeah, I mean, right. Who would want to?
Yeah.
So he's in room A for a while, whatever, getting zapped.
Mm-hmm.
And, so then.
Where's PETA during all this?
Good question.
Okay.
So then they put him in room B. Now, room B is a nice room. You know, he's feeling nice and relaxed and all that. But, of course, he's got his electrodes planted in his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? They pipe in, memories of room A.
Okay.
So that the rat thinks he's in room A.
Even though he's in room B.
Even though he's in room B.
Which looks completely different.
And he gets all nervous and fidgety and is worried about, in any second now, his feet are going to get zapped by electric wire.
Right.
These are the kind of things that our government is working on, listeners.
Well, I got it right here. Researcher controls colleagues' motions in first human brain-to-brain interface.
Ugh.
Yeah. This is from the University of Washington. University of Washington researchers have performed what they believe is the first non-invasive human-to-human brain interface, with one researcher able to send a brain signal via the internet to control the hand motion of a fellow researcher.
How's that, listeners? Your tax money going into fund studies like this so you can be further controlled.
Now, why did you have to say that?
Well,
what do you mean your tax money?
So let's say now what? Because it was at this university, it's not
of
tax
course,
money?
right.
Listeners.
I want to read what the quotes are from the scientists.
Go ahead, quote.
The internet was a way to connect computers, and now it can be a way to connect brains.
Oh, yep, stinking
We want to take the knowledge of a brain and transmit it directly from brain to brain.
It's going to be like on The Matrix.
Yeah. So then he goes on. It was both exciting and eerie to watch an imagined action from my brain get translated into actual action by another brain. This was basically a one-way flow of information from my brain to his brain. The next step is having a more equitable two-way conversation directly between the two brains.
Yippee.
Brain-computer interface is something people have been talking about for a long, long time.
My bet is they've been doing it for a long
When's the last
time
time we talked about brain-to-brain interface?
Not real long.
I mean, we're, 45. It's a long, long time. You'd think we'd have talked about it at least once in our last 45 years. I don't recall ever talking about it. Who is talking about this?
Well, some people that have met us have would opt to say that we have our automatic brain-to-brain.
That's true.
interface
That's
going
true.
on.
The scientist goes on to say, goes on to caution that this technology only reads certain kinds of simple brain signals, not a person's thought.
No,
and
they
it
would never
doesn't
do
give
that.
anyone the ability to control your actions against your will.
No.
Both researchers were in the lab wearing highly specialized equipment and under highly ideal conditions. They also had to obtain and follow a stringent set of international human subject testing rules to conduct the experiment.
Yeah, they follow.
There's rules that
Yeah, it's like it's like the UN rules.
It is.
All the governments make sure that they follow to the T.
It's like all them treaties and stuff. The chemical weapons treaties and all that good stuff.
And the amendments and the bills that they sign that say a tax is only temporary,
right?
Or a
sunset clause,
or a social security card number will never be used for identification.
Or
purposes.
we're going to temporarily close the gold window.
Yeah, all of those.
We're going to temporarily suspend the convertibility of U.S. dollars into gold.
Yeah,
those sorts of things. Wait a minute.
What?
Oh, this last sentence. Their research was funded in part by the National Science Foundation's Engineering Research Center for Sensorimotor Neural Engineering and the U.S. Army Research Office.
And there you have it, listeners. Thank you for listening to Stanching Tyranny. Keep those brains in check.
Yeah.
Don't let any probes be stuck in your neck without your permission. We'll see you next week. Stanching Tyranny Radio.